In this video, I'm going to go over a couple different types of word problems that you can solve with the quadratic formula. Here's the first type. During one of his diving shows, Jack jumped off a cliff into the water below. His height as a function of time can be modeled by the function h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 16t plus 480, where t is the time in seconds and h is the height in feet. How many seconds until Jack hits the water? Well, if you think about it, hitting the water is a height of what? 0. And so all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting 0 in for the height. So here we go. 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 16t plus 480. Now I'm going to solve. So negative 16 plus or minus the square root of 16 squared minus, it's a little squared, 4 times negative 16 times 480 all over 2 times negative 16. Alrighty, and that'll get me negative 16 plus or minus the square root of 30,976 all over negative 32. Well, finally, when I do all my math, I'm going to get these two answers, negative 5 or 6. Now, will both of those answers work? Can we have a negative 5 seconds? No, we can't go back in time. So in this case, this answer doesn't work, and my answer for here is how many seconds until Jack hits the water? 6 seconds. All right, let's do another one that's basically just like this one. I would suggest that anytime you want to try something on your own, you pause this video and do it, and then come back and see if you have the right answer. All right, here, a model rocket is launched into the air and then comes back down in the path that is modeled by a parabola. The height of the model rocket is represented by the function f of x equals 144x minus 16x squared, where x is the time in seconds and f of x is the height of the rocket in meters. So number 1, they want us to write an equation that represents the time in seconds, x, when the rocket hits the ground. 2, they want us to solve it. And 3, explain what our solutions mean. So here we go. Again, because it's going to hit the ground, the height is 0. And so instead, the number 1, all we're going to do is we're going to put, here, I'll put a little 1 right here. All we're going to do is put a 0 where f of x is. That's it. 44x minus 16x squared. Number 2, solve the problem. Well, I'm going to do a couple things here before I solve the problem. I am going to go ahead and put it in standard form, which means I'm going to put the negative 16x squared first. That way I can really see what my a is. And then the 144 is positive. What about our c? What value is c? Well, if it's not showing, then it probably is 0. Okay. There are a couple ways you can solve this. I'd probably, if I was not doing this video, I would probably solve it using the greatest common factor and pulling that out. But let's show you with the quadratic formula here. Okay, I have negative 144 plus or minus the square root of 144 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 0 all over 2 times negative 16. That's going to give me a negative 144 plus or minus 144 all over negative 32. All right, now I just did something real fast. I figured out what was inside the radical, and then I did the square root of it, and it ended up being 144. When I use the addition sign, I will get a 0. And when I use the subtraction sign, I'm going to get a 9. So it says explain the solutions in terms of this problem situation. I think it would be best if I actually showed you what this might look like on a graph. Here you can see the parabola, and I want to show you where x equals 0 is right here and where x equals 9 is right here. So what do you think? What does the 0 and the 9 mean? Well, if you said the 0 means when right before it launches and the 9 is when it hits the ground, you are correct. The next 2 story problems are going to be area problems. Here's this one. Mrs. Kennard's plan for her backyard looks like this. Determine the value of x if the area of her backyard is 798 square feet. And then you see x and 3x plus 15. Well, hopefully you remember that area is just length times width. And so I'm going to set this up and say x times 3x plus 15 equals 798. And then I'm going to go ahead and distribute that x to both the 3x and the 15, and I should get 3x squared plus 15x equals 798. If you remember correctly, in quadratic formula, I need to have a 0 on one side. So I'm going to be subtracting 798 from both sides. And I think I'm going to go ahead and write the answer up here on the other side of the page. So I have 3x squared plus 15x minus 798 equals 0. All right. Quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of 15 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 798 all over 2 times a. All right, I'm going to simplify the top and the bottom, and I'll get negative 15 plus or minus the square root of 9,801 all over 6. And again, I'm going to remind you, when you do your math on the calculator, do the top part first, and then once the top part is done, then divide by your denominator. And when you do that, you're going to get x equals 14 or negative 19. Well, both of those work. Can x equal a negative number? Can x be a negative distance? And the answer is no. And so my final answer is just 14 feet. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is done exactly the same way. So what I would like you to do is pause this video and try it on your own and see if you get the same answer that I'm going to get. So I'll wait. Okay, here we go. Area is x times x plus 3, and it says the area of the tabletop is 40 square feet, so 40. Now, just because it says square feet doesn't mean you square the 40. That's just its measurement, its unit. Then I'm going to distribute, so I'll have x squared plus 3x equals 40. Then I'm going to subtract 40 from both sides, and I'll get x squared plus 3x minus 40 equals 0. This can be done two different ways. You can do this with factoring, or you can do it with the quadratic formula. Okay, so the quadratic formula is negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 40 all over 2 times 1. Okay, so when I simplify that, I'm going to have 169 inside of the radical, and the square root of 169 is 13 all over 2. Well, when I do the addition, I'm going to get 10 over 2, which equals a 5. And if I do the subtraction, I get a negative 16 over 2, which is a negative 8. And again, we have to go back and look at the story problem. And the negative 8 does not make sense in the story problem because you can't have a negative measurement. And so the answer here is 5 feet. All right, hopefully that's what you got. Now it's your turn to go try some story problems. Go and have some fun.